Mikuro, we want to take this brief moment in this video to explain once again what New Afrikan Vodún is. It's very short, very brief. New Afrikan Vodún is a spiritual way of life in general. It's a political statement and way of life also. The political aspect comes from the fact that the term New African comes from the movement that started in 1968 with the New African Peoples Organization when they convened in Detroit at a New African Peoples Conference, and they created the provisional government for the Republic of New Africa at that time. There were many people of all walks of life, even atheistic backgrounds and whatnot, at that meeting. And there were a few cultural people. Some of those cultural people continued in tradition and they maintained aspects of the New African philosophy. And the whole concept of New African is this. We are a New African people based on the fact of the Itankale, which is the Yoruba word for loosely translates as diaspora, as a result of the Na Wankuvo, and that is a phone word that describes the great disaster of captivity or so-called enslavement and the results that came from that Jim Crow, colonialism, the whole destruction of African people, even their part in it, their self-destruction. That is the Na Wankuvo. So we became, as a forced amalgamation in the Americas and in Europe and other places, a New African people. That New African spirit, that political spirit, dominated in the American South. So at that conference, they made the statement that the declaration that they were the primary goal for that New African movement at that time was to gather land, to have land. And they proposed that they have five southern states in the United States of America. And as wide-eyed as that was, at that time, it seemed attainable. And there is some degree of attainableness in that, but we won't go into those aspects of, especially here on video, about that type of thing. So that gives you the background of how the whole New African thing came about. Later on, there was those of us that said, well, of course, when I say us, I'm coming in later. We were coming in later in the game. We weren't even born in '68, but there were those of us came later and said, well, we should have a New African approach to our traditions. At any given point, we are composed of 51 to 71, and some say more. Out of 51 to 71 ethnics, we have a lot of them in us, African ethnicities. So we proposed that there should be a New African spiritual system of sorts. But those type of things can't be forced. They have to be studied and organically happen. And so this is what has happened with us, and that's why we call our tradition a New Afrikan Vodún tradition. For one reason, we live both the Isheshe, the Yoruba aspect of Vodun, and Vodun proper as a way of life. And we mix them without any kind of any problems or whatnot. We speak both Fon and Yoruba. We speak the proper languages to the proper deities. If there's a Fon deity, we speak the Fon language. If there's a Yoruba deity, we speak Yoruba. So the New Afrikan Vodún, and some people have criticized it, a lot of people have criticized it, but they don't criticize the Hindus for creating a new religion off of the indigenous system that was already in India around 1200 BCE. They don't criticize them. They don't criticize the Jains, an offshoot of Hinduism, for creating a their religious symbol. The religious symbol that you see for the Jans came about in the 1970s. And so these same African people that will criticize us for taking a new and modern and updated approach to our traditions will not criticize these people for creating new religions, no matter how long or how short ago it was. These were movements that these people felt that needed to be made in order for their traditions to prosper and adjust to the current times. And that's what New Afrikan Vodún is. And speaking of that, within New Afrikan Vodún, we have sought to eliminate those things that are not useful to African people, and in many instances were harmful to African people, held us back in our progress. There's an Odu Ifa where it talks about a Rumela. There was human sacrifice up until that point. So Orumila had lost track of his son when he was a little boy. So as this young boy, he was in this holding pen, which would be like a jail today, waiting to be sacrificed. He was going to be sacrificed. And so Orumila walked past the pen, and he heard this boy singing this song that sounded so familiar. He was like, I used to sing that song to my son. So he walked over and he asked him who he was, and the boy told him who his mother was. And he was like, yeah, you're my son. So Orumila went to, he was Orumila Talade, Orumila that wore the crown, wore the Ade. So he had considerable influence in this particular incarnation. And he went to the chiefs and the kings. Long story short, human sacrifice was banned. That is the story amongst the Yoruba, at least the Isheshe practitioners, of how human sacrifice came to not be after having been part of the tradition, as well as many other traditions in the world, for a long time. Now, that being said, what is wrong with us adjusting our systems to the current mode? A lot of the history that has been presented to us, especially by Dahomey, has been made up, and it was created by the ruling Dahomeans a lot of the times to enforce and cement their rule. But we're finding out from talking to the older dynasties that were there that this is not true, and the Dahomeans made up a lot of that stuff. So New Afrikan Vodún is also about bringing back those ancient things that were positive, but they were suppressed. New Afrikan Vodún is for African people only, so-called black people. Often we don't have to even make that statement, Now you have this ecumenical Yoruba / Ifa / Orisha stuff going on, this ecumenical Vodun stuff going on that is in complete violation and contrary to the ancestral laws, to allow the non-African in your system when this is an ancestral related tradition. So New Afrikan Vodún is also here to bring clarity to those that have forgotten who they are and and what their traditions are. So we back and forth, we refer to the Creator as Mawu, Lisa, or Olodumare, according to what language we're using. In Hinduism, you have those that practice Hinduism. There is an upwards of 700 dialects that they may be using at any given time. No one is criticizing them. And we could care less what the Hindus are doing, but we're just noticing how Africans, the standard that they put on Africans, they don't put on the world. The world can do them any kind of way, but an African can't step on your shoestring without, you wanting to knock their heads off. So, in short, that is New Afrikan Vodún. We pray that you've got some out of this, and then you can build upon it. As always with our videos, we want you to build upon that which is being taught. Odigba.